Mark Kenny, in political terms, why is Tony Abbott spending so much time in South Australia?
Well, of course, South Australia is a state in the Commonwealth that the government needs to do better in than it's done in the past. In fact, it's done fairly poorly in recent elections. There are some key seats there. It's not a whole number of seats when looked at in the grand scheme of things, 11 lower house seats there in South Australia, but you've got some key players, Christopher Pyne, the most senior minister there, and others who are really facing a difficult time as a result of the collapse of the car industry, something that's happened on this government's watch. You've had the submarine issue playing very, very badly for the federal government there as well, with the decision not to build the submarines using ASC. Really the coalition's been on the nose big time with South Australian voters as a result of all of this.
How much of a danger is Nick Xenophon and his new party, if I can put it like that? Last time around the election, he easily got a quota in his own right in the Senate.
Yeah, he almost got 2 quotas, which is virtually unheard of. Nick Xenophon is a unique political product really in Australia. He's a very intelligent, articulate senator. He's got a very high profile and a very high level of respect from voters and across the political community. He's a bit of a stuntmeister in some ways and been known to do some pretty amazing things to get publicity, but he's nonetheless a very rigorous legislator and a rigorous thinker. And this has gone down well with South Australian voters. So I think the fact that Nick Xenophon is now flexing his muscles, and this is largely driven by what he sees as the federal government's abandonment of manufacturing in South Australia, particularly cars and in the defence industry, submarines in particular. The fact that he's muscling up now is a major problem for the coalition because, as I say, there's a long-term state Labor government there which says something about the proclivities of voters in that state, and the fact that these industries have been effectively closed off in South Australia is a major worry, and Xenophon's campaigning very effectively on it.
Now, the government pushing ahead to build these frigates in South Australia and have this continuous build program, will that, if you like, correct in voters' minds the issues they've taken with, say, the withdrawing subsidies to the car industries, the submarines, etc.?
Well, that's the plan. That's clearly the plan. How convincing it will be, I guess, remains to be seen. I think brand Liberal is in real trouble in South Australia. Now, whether that's going to result in Christopher Pyne losing his seat, I think that's a big call. There are stories about Pyne losing his eastern suburb seat of Sturt every time there's an election, and every time Christopher Pyne hangs on. I think he's been there since '93. So who knows? And he's on a margin, I think, now around sort of 10%, 10 or 12%. So he's made it into a relatively safe seat at the moment, but there are a whole lot of others who are quite marginal. The seat of Hindmarsh, for example, both sides seem to concede privately that's almost certainly going back to Labor. So who knows?
So Tony Abbott's there this week for 3 days. Cabinet is meeting there. It's likely we'll see more of that before the next election.
I think so, yes. But as I say, it's not where the motherload of seats are in this election. There's only a relatively small number that can change, but this could be a close election. As we know, the government's been trailing for most of the time. So assuming that the government wins, just for a moment, assuming that the government survives, it wouldn't be at all unlikely for it to get a bit of a haircut to its majority, and that would be reflected in South Australia. So every seat counts, and that's why there's a fair bit of effort going into shoring up South Australia at the moment.
Mark Kenny, thank you.